Hey, welcome back. This is the second example of correlation for entries and exits. I'm going to try to keep this lesson a little bit shorter as the previous one, but ask me afterwards how that went. So yeah, we're looking at New Zealand, the New Zealand group. We're looking at the 4 hours. We're going to use that as the big boy, and then we'll use the 60-minute as the trading time frame. So I've drawn out the lines. We can clearly see that there's New Zealand weakness in the market. We have a nice pop all over the place. Pop, 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 and pop. I need to hire somebody to do those sound effects for me. But yeah, you guys get the idea. And now I'll go to the 60-minute and we'll look at the pullback from there. So basically the trade we're trying to trade is this. Look at all the different pairs. I'm going to keep on moving up and down so you have time to look at all the different pairs and see that they are nicely synced except for Aussie New Zealand, which is just a little bit messy. Okay, so I'm going to pause it and then open up the 60-minute. 1 second. Alright, here we go, looking at the 60-minute now. So on all of these we can clearly see where the push ends and where we can assume that the pullback starts. Although, for instance, New Zealand USD here, price just keeps on hovering, then goes slightly lower, and only then does it start to pull back a little bit. So pullback coming in now, pullback coming in. I'm going to stop right there. April 1st, 1700 hours. Let's have a look at that same area. April 1st, 1700 hours, few candles more. There we go. April 1st, oh, I'm already too far. So this one not really pulling back, right? Just keeps on going lower and lower and lower. Next one. Oh, I went way too far. I got carried away there. Around here. Okay, so pulling back, not pulling back, pulling back. Next. April 1st, a few more hours. And there we are. We're looking at the same thing. Pulling back as well, nicely too. Okay, pound New Zealand coming in very deep. We're already below the breach line. That's weird. A few more candles. Okay, we're coming back. We're coming back. Okay. Now, looking at all of these, you can argue, is this a V formation? Was this a V formation in a super deep test? But why is it not synced? Why is this one going back up again? This one just keeps on dropping, but it's lining up at the same time as the V formation on New Zealand USD. Then New Zealand yen. Can't really see a V here. Maybe this was one, but price went back up. Keeps on holding in that area now, so this was maybe a faker. Not entirely sure. It's definitely not making the V formation at the same time as New Zealand USD and New Zealand CAD, right? This one just holding here, not really doing anything. And this one, big V at the same time as New Zealand USD and New Zealand CAD. And this pair here, I almost forgot about this one. Keeps on going up and up and up, not really pulling back, right? Okay, now let's open them up one by one. Full screen, I think that's easier. Okay, so this one looks like that was our V formation, and then continued to go lower and lower and lower. Let's draw that V. Test phase. This one. Looks like our V only came later. test phase. Let's compare this one immediately with, well, let's see if, yeah, it does actually go. Let's compare it immediately with New Zealand USD. So the V here on New Zealand USD is a lot earlier than it is on New Zealand Swiss franc. The bottom of the V here on New Zealand USD is the top of the V on New Zealand Swiss franc. So New Zealand Swiss franc, lagging pair. Test phase here is this one is already on its way. It's actually giving you another opportunity to get in lower or add a position. Okay. So leader, laggard so far. I know that's not part of the lesson, but it's good to repeat that as well, right? Okay, New Zealand CAD. As I said, didn't really pull back, and this whole thing, that was a V on the other ones. That's a first push here, and that would be, you know, a mini test if you want to chase it, which you shouldn't. Never chase. Look at that. Same V, right? As on New Zealand USD. Okay, so also a leader, but a leader that we can't trade. New Zealand yen. V formation. Test phase. Even a nice little spike would be a nice entry. And drops. Okay, let's see where that V is. That V is lining up right with New Zealand Swiss franc. Okay, so also laggard pair, or not the first leader at least. The same goes for New Zealand Swiss franc. Those two are not the first leaders, but second leaders. They do play out. Laggards, I generally see them as pairs that don't play out. Okay, Euro New Zealand. Okay, that's something. If you want to draw it like this, or you want to draw it like this, there's a buyer there, that's for sure. Test phase all the way here. And notice that spike there. After that, price goes higher. Notice that spike. Keep that in mind, because I just mentioned it on this one as well. Looks like that spike is right at the same time, right? At 5 o'clock. Right at the same time. So we have three second leaders. Here New Zealand, New Zealand yen, and New Zealand Swiss. If I look at this V, this whole thing, or if you want to look at this V, this small thing here, it lines up right with New Zealand Swiss franc and New Zealand yen. Same V there. Okay. And pound New Zealand. Look at how deep that whole pullback phase comes. If this is the push up, that's the guy that started, and this comes that deep, no one will trade that. But we can still use it for correlation purposes. So either you want to trade draw the V like this, or you want to draw it like this. Either is fine here, and then the test phase would be around here. Now let's see if that lines up with any of the other pairs. So V here goes up like that. That actually looks right like the same timing as New Zealand USD and New Zealand CAD. So pound New Zealand is actually one of the leaders, or it's at least at the same timing as the leaders, but it's way more messy. So that one is not tradable, or most people wouldn't trade it. Still works though, still goes higher, but that spike will scare people. The fact that it goes below the guy that started it will scare people, and then if you enter somewhere here and this happens, that will definitely scare some people too. Maybe even stop you out at break even. Okay, and then finally, Australian dollar. Oh, that's the wrong one. Australian dollar, New Zealand dollar. Pullback phase just seems to go higher and higher and higher. If anything, there was a small trade here, but that's way before the others. Remember when I was talking about April 1st, 1700 hours? This little V is on March 29th. So that's not lining up in the same time at all. Then later on this happens. You can see if that little V there, even though it has no value for us in this pair, if it lines up with any of the other V's. Test phase around here. Let's have a look. Let's have a look first if it also goes higher. Well, it just grinds up and then finally it goes. Okay. So V formation all the way here, no, not lining up with any of them. Definitely a laggard pair. And besides, that V didn't have value for us in that pair anyway, so we wouldn't trade it. But also correlation wise, this one has no value. And that makes sense because it's Australian dollar, and there's very often Australian dollar and New Zealand dollar, the two currencies, are correlating with each other. So that means that the Australian dollar New Zealand dollar pair can't really move, or is very erratic, or is moving with a lot of spikes, or it's just grinding in one direction. Okay, so that would be the first one to leave out here anyway, at the slightest sign of something odd is happening. And we already had this. There was no pullback, so something odd was happening. Big cross goes through Aussie New Zealand. Okay, so regarding the entries, we had 3 V formations at the same time and 2 V formations at the same time. So 3 leaders, which was pound New Zealand, New Zealand USD, and New Zealand CAD. Those were at the same time. And then, it was 3 and 3 actually. And then Swiss franc New Zealand, New Zealand yen, and Euro New Zealand. They were also at the same time, and they were second leaders. I don't think there were real laggards here, because Aussie New Zealand, you can't really call that a laggard because it does move and it's actually going up already while the others are still pulling back. So no laggards here, just 3 leaders and 3 second leaders. Okay. Other than that, seems like a pretty straightforward setup. So now let's have a look at the exits. Let's start with New Zealand USD. What's a logical area there to get out? I would say around here is a logical area to get out. Okay. New Zealand Swiss franc. Once it starts moving, around here is a logical area, although it moves very, very fast. But we have to remember this is a 60-minute time frame, so we have 1 hour for each candle, so that gives us a lot of time to think about getting out if we're in front of our screens. And if you have an order for your exit, then this would make a lot of sense. Otherwise around here, but it's a little bit more aggressive. And we see now in hindsight that price goes even lower, but we always have to be a little bit conservative with our exits. As Naveen says in the lesson, and the most dangerous thing to humanity is focusing too much on your hopes and dreams. Not that it's not good to have hopes and dreams. It's good to have them, but in trading, you don't want to have that. You want to only rely on what you see, not on what you hope to see. Okay. So that's this one. Does that exit line up? Well, it's a little bit later actually than New Zealand USD. New Zealand USD, the exit was a lot earlier. It's in fact before New Zealand Swiss franc even plays out. That's interesting. Okay. Let's see what we have on exits here. New Zealand CAD. Ooh, no data at all. So we would have to go to a higher time frame to find something, or only rely on momentum. Okay, so here I'm just gonna draw this area because that's where it starts to hold for a while, and that will definitely be something that will make you think, well, maybe this is it. That's the end of the line. Okay, does that line up with any area? Well, not really. Maybe a little bit with the New Zealand USD, which had the same timing on the V formation. Okay, fair enough. That could be an exit for both. New Zealand yen. Well, 2 areas. I would say around here because support, and also around here because it seems like the bottom of this little range. This is just a faker, 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 faker. So around here somewhere. So that it turned around from here does make a lot of sense, right? So let's have a look at those 2 exits. They're very close to each other in candles, or just a few candles apart. And it does line up with New Zealand Swiss franc exit as well. Or at least with the first one does line up with New Zealand Swiss franc. The second one, not so much. Okay, so we have some correlation for these two pairs for their exit. Euro-New Zealand then. Logical exit around here, around here. If you want to push it, maybe around here. All of that is relatively close to each other, just a few candles separated. So that target matches nothing really. This one matches with New Zealand yen and also with New Zealand Swiss franc, and the final one is roughly the same area. I would say it's the same area as the lower target on New Zealand yen. Okay. Pound New Zealand. Interesting. I would say there's a target here because resistance, this price reacted from there, so it does seem like a price that matters. And then around here because this supply level, which will be covered in an upcoming lesson, but that does make sense to me. And then up here would be another target, but price never reaches there. So let's see what we have on that first target. Same target as New Zealand yen, lower target, and same target as Euro New Zealand, higher target. Okay, all of those make sense. And then finally Aussie New Zealand targets. Well, we have nothing on that side. Sorry, I didn't want to draw that. So it would have to be based on momentum, or maybe it would already be here in this whole zone when it just keeps on holding. And otherwise around here as it comes down and you think, oh, that's the end of it. But yeah, this one would be hard to use for targets. Same for entries, basically. I think quite hard to use. Okay, so I hope that makes sense, both from the entry point of view and the exit point of view as well. I tried to keep it shorter, but it's only 3 minutes shorter. So yeah, I'm going to see if there's enough time to not make this lesson too long to make another example, and otherwise we'll make more examples for the upcoming lesson. Alright, cheers.